My name is David Luebke. I've been at the University of Oregon since 1997, so a really long time now. I teach courses on early modern Europe, late medieval and early modern Europe. There's some surveys in there, an introductory survey of that period, an upper division survey too. Um, I teach courses on the persecution of witches. I teach courses on the reformations of the 16th and the 17th centuries. I teach courses on crime and punishment in early modern Europe. I also poach, which is a kind of nasty word for teaching out of your primary field, in modern German history, Nazi Germany and the Holocaust too. I've taught a Holocaust course pretty regularly at U of O for pretty much all the time. For the last 15 years or so, I've been interested in how it was that Catholics and Protestants managed to live in the same communities without killing each other, to put it very crudely. And so I wrote a book about an area in Germany, a region of Germany, where that seems to have been the case for a very long time. Um, Not that they all started killing each other all of a sudden, but where there was a fairly easy cohabitation between those different groups. And since then, I've gotten interested in churches that were shared, where one part was Catholic and the other part was Protestant, and how that worked out. There were a lot of them. There were over 1,000 in mostly in Central Europe, within the boundaries of what was called the Holy Roman Empire. Um, so that's been interesting me lately. I'm currently writing a general history of the Protestant Reformation, or Protestant and Catholic Reformations of the 16th century in the Empire, that's pitched at an undergraduate audience. Um, so a student who is interested in studying those periods, I would be a logical person to study with, along with several of my colleagues, actually. We've got quite a few in that broad field. Um, that's true if the student's larger aim is to go on to become an academic, or to go into some sister or cousin field where those kinds of skills, the kinds of skills that you would acquire studying those things, would be relevant. And there are any number of fields like that. Library sciences, obviously, museums, um, archives, all kinds of stuff. Anything actually where primary research and content creation, if you like, is an important factor. Most of the students who come to me are students who've already identified some field, some subfield in early modern Europe, as one of the things that they are interested in. I've had students come in who are interested in early modern environmental history, which is a really interesting field. People who are interested in peasant studies, witchcraft, witch persecution. Um, One of my more interesting applications came from a student who had done some work as an undergraduate on a phenomenon called cruentation, which is the belief that a body, that a person who has been murdered will bleed in the physical presence of the person who murdered them. And this is a very widespread belief in early modern Europe still, and sometimes had an impact on judicial decision making, even. And it's a vestige of medieval or trial by ordeal, actually. Um, and the student came and she wrote a master's thesis on that topic, and it was one of the first things that had been written on that topic since the 19th century. When someone has sort of signed on with me to do their master's thesis, and they're working in my field, and they want to work with German and with primary sources. I start them off pretty early with paleography, that is, just learning how to read those old texts. And um, often what I'll do is set up, I mean, of course, it varies from one student to the next, but regular meetings in which we'll work through a text and sort of slowly, gradually build up the skills to read. and that's a pretty consistent commitment um, for both me and the student. Um, it doesn't always work out this way, but students who are working with me toward a master's degree are very often the students who are also assisting me in the courses that I teach, if I'm teaching a course that has assistance. Um, so that's another area in which I'll have a lot of contact with students. Usually, my students will, and this is true of just about everyone in the department, usually my students will do a directed reading with me. If I can, I like to have more than one student, sort of a mini seminar organized around a shared interest. And those will meet, whenever they can, through the year, and as often as they can happen. So, if someone who wanted to study with me and to do research in a field where I can really be of the most help to them would need to work on languages in the first instance. Most of my work is in German, so if you don't have German, then you might want to work with somebody else. Same thing with French, study with somebody whose field is in French as an depending on your field, you might want to pick up some Latin too. Latin was still the international language in the early modern period, so a lot of it is in Latin. Um, those are the main qualifications, though, and it always helps to have some background in European history, I suppose, when you apply, but it's not absolutely